Good evening and welcome. I'm Kaiser, and in this Star Trek CCG First Edition deck building video, we'll have a look at a really easy to set up Klingon deck that, even if you haven't played with virtual cards at all, you will find very easy to set up, to play, to enjoy hopefully, and it also will showcase a dilemma strategy that consists of basically a single card, and even if you hate virtual cards with a passion, it's one card that you might consider adding to your Decipher only card pool just because it helps setting the game up and makes things easier, especially for players who don't really want to get into the seed phase so intensely, and it helps you get the seed phase over in a minute, and that's it. So let's have a look. As I said, this is a Klingon deck. In episode 8, we showcased Next Generation era Klingons. This time we'll focus on classic original series Klingons, and since by the time this will go live, the new set Second Star to the Right will be available. Next week, hopefully, we'll have a look at classic films era Klingons. But for today, let's have a look at classic series Klingons. As I said, this deck is really easy to set up. It only requires 6 non-dilemma seed cards, and they are pretty much straightforward. First of all, we need an alternate universe doorway in our doorway phase, simply because since this deck is set in the past from a Star Trek CCG perspective, where it's about the 24th century, so we're playing in the past, we need a doorway that allows us to get those personnel into play. And then we have another doorway phase seed card, and that is the Squiers Rules. Now this one is the centerpiece of the dilemma pile, and I will talk about that once I've talked about the remaining setup. So these are your doorway phase seeds. Next up is the dilemma phase, the mission phase, and as you can see, we are going for a no frills 3 space 3 planet setup. Sometimes we don't require any skills at all. Explore Blackluster simply needs cunning greater than 50, so you don't have to worry about losing skills there. Amnesty Talks has 2 different set of requirements, or actually 3, but we can't do the third one. Maruk is not in the deck. Here we are looking at the leadership, security, double treachery part. Fisher research is easy with astrophysics and physics, and all our guys will have the alternate universe icon, so that is also quite easy. And our planets are Pursue Origins, which requires security, leadership, physics, and cunning. Fever Emergency, and here we'll look at the biology and officer part, because that is also very easy. And Secure Strategic Base, it requires anthropology, security, and again 3 alternate universe icon personnel, but we'll have those in boatloads. Okay, so it doesn't really matter how we organize them. We are usually looking at doing 3 missions. So we want 2 35-point missions, and then we can also do a 30-point one. You can also get by with doing the 2 30-point ones and a 35-point one, because we can score bonus points at the 30-point missions here. But really, you don't have to worry at all about the order where you place them. If you don't want to play interactive, and this deck doesn't really lend itself to playing too interactively, you just want to keep them close together, and you seed your single outpost at any of these missions apart from Amnesty Talks, because that doesn't have the Klingon icon. So usually we want to put it somewhere central. Let's do it at the planet, because then we can beam down personnel and attempt even before we have a ship out. On our outpost, we seed the incident The Final Frontier. This is the centerpiece. This is our play engine here. First of all, it has a once per game in place of a normal card play ship download. So even if you have a bad starting hand and you haven't drawn a single ship, once per game you can convert your normal card play into a download of a ship. So you will never be stranded without a ship at the beginning of the game, unless your opponent distracts your plans with a computer crash or something like that. But these are risks that we have to take. The main point here is that We don't have to jump through any burning hoops or whatever. We can simply play a lot of personal for free. Twice each turn, your matching Klingon original series personal or alternate universe non-aligned original series personal may report here for free. And this will cover all of our personal. So that says 2 personal can play for free each turn. And on top of that, we also get our regular card play, so we can get 3 personal into play every turn, unless we want to convert our normal card play into something else, like for example the ship download, or we want to play a particular verb that requires the card play. We will also have a seeded event, 5-year mission. It sees on table at the end of each of your turns. If all your personal and ships in play are original series, you may draw an extra card. Immune to Kevin Uxbridge, so it can't easily be nullified. And that means that we already have 1 extra draw, and we have to generate something else via some other means. And then we'll also have Preserver Obelisk. It seeds in the facility phase. If you have no personal in play, we don't have any personal in play in the seed phase here, you may download up to 2 different original series personal who name in lore a planet you seeded. Okay, now we have to look in detail about what the text on our personal says. Just remember that you have Captain Kang, and he mentions the planet Beta 12A. That's Pursue Origins. You can see it next to the planet mission icon here, Beta 12A. So he names that planet, so we may download him. He must, of course, report somewhere where he can report, so our outpost. And this fella here, Redibi, he mentions Organia in the text, so he can also be downloaded with Preserver Obelisk. So that's kind of the new Assign Mission Specialist. It lets you start with 2 personal, and it also works as a bonus point engine, but not at any mission. You score 5 points whenever a personal that is named, or that names in lore a 23rd century mission. So Pursue Origins states in lore that it is in the 23rd century, and for Secure Strategic Base, it's the same. Meaning, if you have Redibi helping complete that mission, you score 5 points. If you have Captain Kang help solve that mission, you score 5 points here. And there are some other personnel in the deck that also name this planet here. So we can potentially score, I think, 50 points with the personnel we have in the deck from this mission. So even if we run into a hire the viewer or a lack of preparation, if we manage to solve that mission, we can usually make up for that loss. Okay, and that's the seed phase done. That's really all we need. We have our 1 location where we report personnel, usually 3 personnel per turn. We have this card that lets us grab a ship, so we should be good to go. The deck really consists of almost exclusively personnel and ships that can play for free. The ships not, of course, but the personnel. So let's just shuffle them, draw 7 cards, and see what a typical turn might look like. As you can see, we find lots of Klingons and some non-aligneds, so we can play 1 guy for free. We can play another guy for free, and then we could card play something. If we have a ship in hand, usually we'll play the ship, and that's our turn. We could attempt right away, or simply end our turn drawing 1 card and an extra 1 for 5-year mission. So as you see, we played 3 cards, but we only draw 2, so at some point we will run out of cards. That's why we also have an extra draw engine in the deck, and that is Ancient Citadel. It's an objective. It has a lot of text, but we focus on the second half here. Plays on your crew or away team with at least 4 Klingon honor. That will be difficult because there isn't too much honor in this deck. Or 4 Klingon original series security. Let's have a look. That's not a security, that's not a security, that's not a security. That's not a security. So that doesn't work yet, but we can do something about it. You see, Captain Kang, one of the personnel we downloaded at the start of the game, has a special download of Classic Disruptor if he is present with 2 other Klingon original series personnel. So at the end of our first turn, we already have 2 others. So we can special download the Classic Disruptor. We have him in hand. That's not ideal, but we can download him anyway. And what this does is each of your original series personnel present is strength +2. Each of your original series leaders present adds security. Leaders are personnel who have leadership or officer. So he gets an additional security, he gets an additional security, he gets an additional security, meaning we've already got 3 Klingon original series security there. And as soon as we play another one from hand, like Trader Worf or Mokrand, then we have our 4 Klingon security there, and then we can play Ancient Citadel using our regular card play with its second function to draw 3 cards and discard objective. So our second turn could look like this. We free play Mokrand, we free play Ruck, and then we have a printed security there, and the Disruptor gives us 3 more security for the leaders there. So our card play could be Ancient Citadel on that away team there. Let's discard it to draw 3. And then at the end of the turn, we would draw 2. And then you see we are back to 7 cards in hand. So with the right number of Ancient Citadels, so there's about 1 for every 7 cards in the deck, meaning you will draw them quite regularly unless you have a really, really terrible shuffle. But these things happen. If you don't want to do that thing where you need to watch whether you have 4 security guys present, you can simply replace those Ancient Citadels with the good old stable Kivas Farjo Collector. It also needs your card play, it also draws you 3 cards. However, it's an event that can be nullified, and it can be mirrored by the opponent with Mirror Image, and with Ancient Citadel, you don't give your opponent the chance to mirror these draws. But if it's easier for you to play with Kivas Farjo Collector, then just replace all the Ancient Citadels in the deck with copies of Kivas Farjo Collector, and that's it. Okay, and that's how we conduct our turns. As soon as we have enough personnel in play, we can fly to a mission, attempt. What's interesting about the ship we have seen first here is that you can once per game special download any universal non-aligned classic series personnel. That's a long condition. It needs to be universal, needs to be non-aligned, needs to be original series, but there are several of these in the deck. For example, we have this super powerful android. Medical, computer skill, transporter skill, biology, diplomacy. What's not to like about this? We also have a different android, the Barbara series, who has a science, computer skill, astronav. You could download her. And those are really your options. And you should always have 1 in the deck by the time you get this ship out. This is a good ship to download with your once per game download of an original series ship. The other ships are the battle cruiser, who can do the same thing for a universal Klingon, and the ICC Groth, which can download any Klingon original series personnel, so that's your most powerful download here. So really any of these ships is fine. The IKS Molar is much more limited. It can only download a Federation infiltrator personnel, and that would be Crichton here. I think there aren't any others. There would be Aaron Devon, Barry Waddle, but he's not in the deck at the moment. So really any ship has a sufficiently powerful download, and that's really it. Note that some of the Klingon personnel you find there have conditional extra skills. for example, Pyrebok, if all your personnel present are original series, he also gains physics and treachery. So, because if you look through the deck, you might notice that physics is here on that mission and it's on that mission. But if you look at the deck list that we find in the description to this video, you'll notice that it only says something about 5 physics personnel. Actually, you have more than that because the conditional skills are not included there. So he gets a physics, and there is another Klingon that has a conditional physics skill, and they will always be active because you only have original series personnel in the deck. So you can always rely on them. And should you be in skill trouble, you also have some skill cheating in the form of Vina, who has the special ability at the start of each turn, select a skill. So any regular skill. If you run into a dilemma that you can't beat, just remember, if you have Vina out at the start of your turn, not on the turn you play her, it has to happen at the start of the turn. So she must already be in play. You can name any skill, and then she will lose it at the end of the turn. But that's enough of a window to beat a mission or to beat a dilemma. And there is also Kalis somewhere. Maybe he's in our hand. Yeah, there he is. Once each turn may gain a skill from a personal present until end of the turn. So you can use him to double up on skills. So even if you don't have a single copy of a skill that you require 2 of, Vina can gain that skill at the start of the turn, and then in the orders phase, Excalibing Kalis can copy that skill. So you can create, let's say, 2 empathy out of the blue and beat a dilemma with that. All right, there aren't any sophisticated download engines or anything like that in the deck. It's really meant to be set up and played immediately. The only downloads that I've included here are the classic disruptor, Bokhang, which I've already shown you, and the ship downloads of various personnel that you can use. And apart from that, there's only a download on Baroner, so the Kirk infiltrator, if you will. He can special download a disruptor overload. I think that we've got that in hand. Yeah, we've seen that here. Just as an example of various cards that you could download. If you look through the personal list, you find other personnel that can download certain pieces of equipment. You could add those. If you add a lot of them, it's probably a good idea to invest in a Q's tent as an additional seed card and put all those downloads there so you don't draw them as dead cards in your hand. But I really wanted to keep this down to 6 seed cards only and have the rest be dilemmas. And that already brings us to our dilemma engine. Now the seed phase is, for many players I know, one of the most appealing parts of the game, where you can really do a lot of strategic or tactical dilemma positioning, where you look at the space line, you have to figure out which affiliation is your opponent playing, what is the most likely starting place, which missions are they going to attempt, and that can take quite some time. And sometimes you run into decks that run only planet missions, and you have 3 or 4 space dilemmas, and you don't know what to do with them, and so on. With this dilemma engine here, you don't have to worry about that at all. You can do your seed phase in a minute, and then you can relax for 5 to 10 minutes while your opponent is figuring out how to place the dilemmas. Now, let's have a look at this. It's called the Squiers Rules. We seeded it in our doorway phase. At start of dilemma phase, shuffle all your dilemmas. So no clever dilemma combo, no clever seeding of certain things at certain positions, no toying around with misseeds and so on. We just shuffle all our dilemmas. So let's take our stack of dilemmas. We shuffle it, and then we have to seed them without looking at them. There are 24 dilemmas in our seed deck left, meaning if our opponent is running 6 attemptable missions, we can spread it out evenly so that every mission will be covered by 4 dilemmas, so our opponent doesn't have an easy choice to go to the underseeded mission first. Every mission will be just as bad. They don't know how bad it is, we don't know how bad it is, because we don't get to see the cards. And then, when a dilemma is revealed, so then when the bottom seed card is pulled out, first of all, one personal is randomly selected to be stopped. So that's already an extra effect. No matter what the dilemma does, before you actually get to parse it, you already have to stop a random guy. And then we look at it. For example, here we'll have a dead end. So that would immediately stop the attempt, and our opponent would have to go to a different mission and try the luck there. In order for this to work, of course, we only can use space planet dilemmas. So it says when your space planet dilemma is revealed. Of course, this makes it a bit difficult because a lot of the powerful dilemmas are space only or planet only. And with the space planet, with the either or dilemmas, you'll find that they don't have those super huge impacts, but rather a lot of them can be beaten by just bringing a large crew. And in most games against the Squires Rules dilemma stacks, I find people just send in a crew of 9 or 10 personnel, and then they can beat a lot of these dilemmas, but still we will slow them down quite a bit. Let's have a look at some of the dilemmas that are in there. For example, there are walls like shuttle crash here. Stops 1 youth personnel, then 1 officer, and then to get past we still require 2 navigation and high attributes. And remember, before this text is actually read, our opponent already has to stop 1 personnel. And then maybe another officer. And whether then they still have the cunning or strength greater than 45, that's not always a guarantee. We have staples like lack of preparation. If our opponent just runs in headlong without worrying about lack of prep at all, maybe we can set them back 10 points. If they bring large teams to have a better chance of busting those dilemmas, at some point they might encounter the higher the fewer and lose a lot of points. And of course, there is also the risky Barclay's protomorphosis disease in there. It's a real gamble. If this is encountered by a large team as the first dilemma, chances are they do have medical science and security and simply score an easy 10 points. But it can also show up after our opponent already had to stop a couple of personnel, and then it can wipe out the remaining away team. So that's one you could swap out, but since this dilemma pile is more of a light-hearted theme, but nevertheless powerful, I'm a big fan of including this. We have very strong dilemmas like Rules of Obedience and its twin Misinterpreted History, which should be somewhere, or a Minion Disintegration Protocol, or Quantum Leap. And for example, these 4 dilemmas, they are all very strong dilemmas in their own right in regular OTF. Sometimes Rules of Obedience and a single other dilemma are enough for some players to think that a mission is protected sufficiently. And now imagine that you run into 4 dilemmas like these, and they all stop an extra personnel before we actually get to read through the text. So that can set you back quite a bit. On the other hand, you will also sometimes have turns where the opponent simply runs through everything. Clown Guillotine, which asks for 2 diplomacy, they might have that. Honor and no security on incentive-based economics can also be passed quite easily. Forsaken, double honor, double treachery. Yes, most away teams can have that. That's one that usually use a lot of in combos, for example, in front of Rules of Obedience. But in this case, it's just luck of the draw. And it makes it very enjoyable, I find, especially since even though it's completely random, it can be quite challenging to play through all these dilemmas. Have a look at the dilemmas that I've included. There are some that are simple walls, others will simply kill personnel, others have a chance of locking down the mission for a turn, like friendly fire or Jewel of the Game, which can stop an entire away team. And there's one card in there that's purely for laughs, and that's Fracture Time. We said against these dilemmas, often it's a very good idea to just bring a large team because so many people will be stopped by the random Squires Rule stop. Now Fracture Time says 9 personnel continue, place out of play all other personnel in this crew or away team. In many games this will be encountered without effect because the opponent has 8 or 9 personnel left, but every now and then you will have that game where your opponent already has a lot of personnel in play and simply throws 18 or 19 guys at the last mission, just trying to brute force the way, and then you reveal Fracture Time and half of their away team doesn't only die, they are placed out of play. So they can't even be got back from the discard pile via some retrieval means. So just look at these dilemmas and see whether there are some that you would take out. Cytoplasmic life form, for example, could be exchanged for something else. But if you actually use it in the game, you'll find that it's surprisingly efficient. It's usually a stop, because chances are that your opponent doesn't have 3 exobiology. And then each skill requirement of this mission must be met by a different personnel when solving it. And that can be quite harsh, because often you have missions that you can safely do with a combination of 1 or 2 personnel that have all the skills. And if it actually turns out no, your superstars can only use 1 skill each, then you might have some more trouble. So even if you say you hate virtual cards with a passion and you are not touching them, just consider this mechanic here. Some people are using something like this as a house rule anyway, that they distribute their dilemmas randomly. Well, this gives some this makes the whole thing a little bit more systematic. It puts certain rules to it. You can only do it with planet space dilemmas. You have to stop one guy first, and that balances out nicely. I've seen very, very strong decks in championship tournaments paired with a Squires Rules dilemma stack, because it's very unpredictable for the opponent. If you don't know what's there, you don't have to play all these mind games. If it's a gamble for both sides, then nobody really can outsmart the other one. All right, if you have any comments about this, let me know. If you have suggestions for space planet dilemmas that would work just as well, let me know in the comments. And if you think that this deck is too basic, as I said, it's meant as a beginner's deck, somebody who hasn't played OTF before but still wants to have a somewhat competitive deck, try this out. If you want to see what you can do with the TOS Klingons, I'll also link a deck by my very good friend Julius, who played a very good deck around Pursue Origins and the TOS Klingons that was a lot more sophisticated, includes a lot more seed cards and stuff that you can download, and then you can do some really nice things and set up a 2-mission win nicely. So that would be a more advanced version of this. If you feel comfortable, or if this already bores you, then I suggest you have a look at Ulysses' deck and see what you can do based around the TOS Klingons. It doesn't use the Squires Rules though, but some other really interesting dilemmas. All right, as I said, next week I'm probably looking at a classic Films period Klingon deck and see what we can do with these guys. Until next time, if you enjoyed this at all, please leave a comment or like this video or subscribe to this channel. And if you have any suggestions of decks to present in future episodes, let me know. Until then, expand your power in the universe. Bye bye.